Thank you, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Detroit Sports Countdown Podcast. I am the Doc, John McAroon, joining you after a 1-week hiatus. Just figured I'd take a little bit of a break after 10 straight weekly Countdown podcasts. This is the show where we rank the top 5 stories in the world of Detroit sports. As always, this great podcast is produced by my friend, confidant, and moral advisor for this week, Kenneth Franzel. Kenny is a great dude. He's got a lot of strong sports opinions, and all I got to do is shoot him a quick text. Hey, man, what's been going on? What are you thinking? What's been going on this week in the world of sports? And he fires them off, boom, 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 and I get to sift through and research them, research the stories, see what's been happening, and rank them. And it's a chance just for me to kind of recap the week that was on a Sunday, the week that was in the world of Detroit sports. And I want to again thank you for listening and downloading. I want to thank the sponsors of this fine podcast, Fanatic U, Detroit Beard Collective, Top Cat Sales, our newest sponsor. We can't continue to put out these 6 to 7 weekly shows without the support of the sponsors, and we love working with our sponsors and helping everybody in the community. So this week was a fascinating week in the world of Detroit sports, but also too quickly, it was a great week for the Detroit Sports Podcast. I mean, December 17th will go down in a day for me that I'll probably never forget. I mean, a series of great things started happening back to back with the podcast. And I was texting Adam, texting Kenny, and I'm like, is this real? What the heck is going on here? What's with all the recognition going on here? Because, you know, Adam and I, the crew of the podcast, we just love Detroit sports, and we love just sitting down, chatting over beers, talking about the issues at hand. We love all the sports radio. We love all the podcasts, and we get a chance to kind of put our own spin on things in our own way. And on, I don't know, for whatever reason, the cosmos on December 17th kind of all converged together, and it was like a series of great things. I mean, Kenny and I got credentialed to cover the Quick Lane Bowl. We'll be there covering the game for Detroit Sports Podcast Network. We got a notification that CBS Detroit ranked us in one of the, ranked us best of in terms of the podcasts in the area. Our host site, Podomatic, has been great to us. I mean, it's a super easy platform to put up a podcast if you're starting out. They messaged us and were like, hey, we noticed that you're doing a lot of things with your podcast. Would you like to kind of just take a survey and tell us a little bit about what might make the service, what might make Podomatic a better service for us? Hey, would you be willing to join a group and just chat with us a little bit and tell us what you think about, Podomatic, the service and hosting and things like that? And I was like, wow, that was a nice privilege for Adam and I, and we greatly appreciate it. And so, the podcast got a little bit of recognition and a little bit of talk around town. So I'm appreciative. We want to thank all the listeners and those who are supporting us. And real quickly, Detroit Sports Podcast Network also partnered with the Quick Lane Bowl a little bit in terms of joining the preferred blogger program, where we just get a chance to kind of talk about the Quick Lane Bowl and the great program. So check our Twitter page at Detroit Podcast for a way for you to find tickets to the Quick Lane Bowl. And we have a link on our Twitter page that if you go to and you buy tickets for the Quick Lane Bowl, then the bowl, for each ticket that's bought, is going to donate $10 to the disabled American veterans. So just our way of giving back a little bit for all the great stuff that's been happening to us. So find us on Twitter at Detroit Podcast, and you can go find the link, buy tickets, enjoy the day, enjoy December 28th, and you can also help out disabled American veterans. We all talk about treating the veterans right. This is a chance to actually help raise funds if you're going to the game. Buy tickets there. It's the official site, and Quick Lane will donate $10 for every ticket that's bought through that link through our podcast at Detroit Podcast. So when we start this, as you all know, if you've been listening, this is the 11th episode. We do what we call the Kenny Franzel honorable mentions, where there's stories out there that kind of, caught our interest, but they don't make the top 5. But Kenny may approve of these as topics as well. He's always like, why are you always talking about the Lions? Why are you always picking them number 1? You're making your podcast stupid because we all know what's number 1. Well, stay tuned this week, because I don't think the Lions are going to be number 1 because they're not playing, which is all good on this Sunday. Little golf clap for me, because no Lions today, so I'm sitting here doing the podcast. But one of the first honorable mentions, one of the first Kenny Franzel honorable mentions goes to Brandon Jennings, who returned in Grand Rapids on Saturday, and he played a great game. And, he looked a little bit like he had some lingering effects still from the injury. His lateral movement on defense wasn't the best in his first game back, but he he ran the offense. He got some alley-oop passes. He looked like, a guy that's recovering. It was nice to see Brandon Jennings return to the court because, he feels like, hey, if Coach Van Gundy wants to use me in Miami, I'll be ready. That'll be later on next week. But if he is able to return to be maybe 90%, 80 to 90% of the player that he was last year, because if you remember, when he went out, he was balling. He was really hitting a stride and playing really solid basketball and was helping the team. And if you remember, they got off to a great run when Josh Smith was traded, and that was partly due to Brandon Jennings' play. So if he's able to come back and he makes a strong push that can help the second unit for this team, then that can only help. And he got support from his boys. Reggie Jackson, Andre Drummond were in attendance, and Andre highlighted the night with another half-court shot. So that was kind of neat. He made a half-court shot in practice at halftime in Grand Rapids. There supporting his boy, and he also made a half-court shot earlier this week. So it's kind of a interesting week for Andre Drummond and the Pistons. And if you stay tuned, you'll get to see where they may rank this week in the world of Detroit sports. All right, let's kick this countdown podcast off. The number 5 story this week is the Detroit Red Wings. They've cooled off a little bit since that 13-game consecutive point streak, and you've watched them a little bit, and you see them struggling a little bit on the power play. You see them struggling again to put the puck in the net. And a lot of talking points regarding the Red Wings surround the platooning of the goaltenders between Jimmy Howard and Peter Mrazek. The big issue is once the Red Wings step on the ice, they have a lot of talent. But what's happening is they're blowing leads late in games, and it's causing quite a bit of concern. Earlier this week, we talked to Jeff Rieger from 97.1 on the Doc and Jock podcast, and he told us, it's just one of those things where if we knew what to do to correct it, it's just one of those fluky things where late in games, teams are flurrying, they're getting the pucks, at the net, and the pucks are finding their way in, and we're going to a lot of games in overtime. And whenever the Red Wings get to overtime, we're all concerned. We're all like, especially if Jimmy Howard's in net. It just seems like it's one of those things now that's becoming a bit like, when's the Tigers closer going to blow the game? When's the Lions kicker going to miss an extra point? Things like that we've become accustomed to. When is Michigan State going to get disrespected? So we become accustomed to it, and now, again, we get to overtime. We've been losing a couple games where we could have earned that extra point, because when you get to overtime, you get 1 point, but if you can win the game in the 3-on-3 overtime or in the shootout, you get that extra point. But the Red Wings, in that 13-game consecutive point streak, there were some games where they let up leads and only earned that 1 point instead of the 2. And what's going on with Jimmy Howard in the shootout? I just wish they would. I think it's allowed where Peter Mrazek could be sitting all game and come in the shootout and just help the team. But it's one of those things where people will say, well, would you rather take a cold Peter Mrazek who's been sitting all game over a Jimmy Howard? Well, at this point, if it's within the rules, I'd do it, because Jimmy Howard in the shootout is a goaltender that you don't have a lot of confidence in that can, get you that extra point. And if you go back and look in terms of the stats, he's really not been that great in the better part of the last year and a half in terms of in the shootout. Now, he has played great in terms of competing with Peter Mrazek in this platoon situation, and it's helped, when you look at the Red Wings goaltending, is really not a big issue outside of the shootout. But in the end, I do believe it's time that Peter Mrazek does get the opportunity to play a little bit more, play some more back-to-back games, and help this team really get to where they need to go. Now, it's not going to take as many points to get into the playoffs, but the Red Wings definitely need to get on a run, and they've cooled off a little bit this week in terms of their play, and we hope to get them back on track in the next week. So the Detroit Red Wings slipping is the number 5 story this week on the Detroit Sports Countdown podcast. Number 4, Michigan State is either getting really lucky in terms of this whole disrespect card, or it's just becoming really old at this point. And I don't know, I'm trying to think of my opinion. Well, this week's Sports Illustrated decided, hey, let's do our regional coverage regarding the playoff. And let's, of course, in this area, we're going to get Michigan State and Mark D'Antonio a little, coverage in Sports Illustrated. And so, again, on the cover, it's released, and Sports Illustrated made a major snafu in terms of calling the head coach of the Michigan State program Mike D'Antoni. And I'm like, is it really that hard to decipher between Mark and Mike? I mean, I know there's a basketball coach that's now signed on with the 76ers as an associate, Mike D'Antoni, but, Mike D'Antonio And I say it too. Mike D'Antonio is not the head coach of the Michigan State Spartans. And at this point in time, I'm just so fascinated because I've gone through it too in terms of, recent experiences this week with FedEx, in drive-thrus, the lack of oversight. I mean, we do a podcast and we try to triple check everything, make sure that it gets up on time, make sure that it's released by our 5 or 6 providers, and we try our absolute best. There's oversight. It's not like, the doc just does everything. We got a lot of different pieces going and we work together. But how is it that a regional paper, a paper that's national, or how is it that a national magazine, one that's greatly respected in terms of Sports Illustrated, how does it get through? Okay, fine, I can get it. You maybe pass along the editing, the printing to some schlub intern who's there, but then it has to kind of go up the chain of command. Does anybody lay eyes on that cover before it goes to print? Anybody? I mean, good God, when it says Mike on there, there's nobody in the department at Sports Illustrated that goes, oh, hey now. Maybe they knew and are afraid. I don't get it. But nobody was able to catch that before it was released. And again, it plays into this whole disrespect card for Michigan State. I mean, good Lord. And I believe they're truly happy this happened. A lot of people are saying, hey, if he wins a national title, he should just go up there to the press conference and just spell out his name. This is how you spell my name and walk away. My goodness. It's frustrating as a Michigan State supporter because all we're asking is get the dude's name right. Mark D'Antonio. And everyone too. I am guilty of this. It's not D with an apostrophe in his name. It's just one word, Mark D'Antonio. And that's that. For the disrespect that, and it is disrespectful. It's not a big deal, but you can't poo-poo it and say it's not disrespectful. I mean, time and time again, the dude's sitting down and he's answering questions about the other program in the state. He's, getting, magazines released. He's going to the big 4-letter network and being called by a wrong name. Come on, dude, this is 2015. That's inexcusable. I mean, dude's got a Twitter page too. So all you got to do is just do some basic cross-referencing that extra 5%. And I get it too because everyone's damn ass lazy. Nobody wants to put in that extra effort. And I'm just surprised they just didn't put Coach Jim Harbaugh is leading the Spartans to the playoff versus Alabama. Shit, just go and do that. Just put a cover out when we win the Cotton Bowl versus Alabama. Put a cover out on Sports Illustrated with Jim Harbaugh in Spartan gear and just say Coach Harbaugh's leading the way for the Spartans in the national title game. That's par for the course. And it's all good for Michigan State. I mean, they always believe they have a chip on their shoulder, and they have every reason to believe that there's some issues going on. I mean, Todd McShay is blasting Connor Cook on the regular, saying that he's not a good guy and that he's not going to be a first-round pick because he talked to scouts and all that nonsense. So Connor Cook's going to have that little extra motivation. Michigan State as a program is going to have that little extra motivation, and that just might be enough to get them over the hump versus Alabama. It's going to be a super tough game on New Year's Eve, but Michigan State definitely didn't deserve to be disrespected like that in a prominent national magazine. And so the Michigan State Spartans, Mike D'Antonio on the cover. Story number 4 this week in the world of Detroit sports. All right, let's hit on the Tigers for a minute. They make the countdown list this week at number 3. It seems like they and the Cleveland Indians are trading, role players as Rajai Davis ended up in Cleveland, and we signed a player that we kind of need and will likely use in multiple roles. Mike Aviles is now a Detroit Tiger, and that's the number 3 story this week in the world of Detroit sports. Aviles turns 35 in March, and he's played for the Royals and the Red Sox. And then the last 3 years, he's played for the Cleveland Indians. And to make room for this move, they had to designate for assignment Kyle Lobstein. And Lobstein was a guy that I was a little bit high on early in his career, but, right now he's going to be, it was a setback for him, but he's going to have to do what he's got to do in order to earn his way back on the roster and see if he's actually part of the Detroit Tigers club. But when you look at Aviles' number, and I'm looking forward to chatting with Vito this week on the Tigers Talk podcast and get his assessment of this latest signing for the Tigers, his numbers are really not that good. Career batting average of .265, OPS of .682, but he's a guy that a ball club may like and find appealing because he can do multiple things and he can fit multiple roles. So, I mean, I guess it's one of those things where if you want to find a utility guy, this is a guy you can bring in and see if he's got stuff left. But, it's another right-handed bat. He can play a variety of infield spots as well as the outfield. So he's got a lot of, purpose, and he can do a lot of different things for this club. But it's just now, when you look at the roster makeup of the Detroit Tigers going into 2016, it doesn't give you World Series confidence, and that's what I'm looking for. And I know it's early. We haven't seen anything in spring training. We haven't seen how Miguel Cabrera and Victor Martinez are looking. We haven't seen yet Justin Verlander throw his first pitch of the, in spring training. But just on face value, looking at what the Tigers' moves, I still feel like, just on the surface, as a fan, I feel like they did the best they could within their budget, but it's not like we're a big market team and can just go get the best players. So when you have the press conference and you say, hey, money's not an object, and you're making moves like this, and the last set of moves, now you've upgraded the team, you've gotten relievers, and you've gotten setup guys, you've gotten people in places to kind of upgrade the bullpen and upgrade the starting pitching. When you look at it, you haven't got the best crop of free agents. You've gotten pieces that can help. And so maybe they're looking to kind of build this team, similarly to Kansas City in terms of getting the right pieces in the right spots and not going like they have in the past and just loading up on superstar talent. And that may happen. The Tigers may gel and get off to a great start in the American League Central, but it's going to be super tough, especially with what the moves that KC has made and in terms of trying to stay on top. And it's going to be tough to really get back to the playoffs. And if they do get back to the playoffs, compete for what we all want here in town is a World Series. So everyone in town is looking like, okay, how does Aviles fit into a World Series club? And you're like, about to be 35-year-old role player with not great numbers. I mean, it's kind of like the Tigers fit another Detroit Tiger, a 265 hitter, and is he going to be able to sustain that even this year? I mean, if he has a step back, then you got, a 240 hitter, and a guy that you're going to platoon in different roles this year. So I'm not sure exactly about the move. I give it a C. Uncommitted, I guess I would say, but it just in general, as part of the whole package in terms of what the Tigers have brought, it's a little bit underwhelming going into the season. I was hoping that maybe Al Avila was blowing smoke up everyone's butt and was like, chill out, and would bring in a Gordon or bring in the Cespedes. And that may still happen, but it looks like with the budget, they're pretty close to shaping up this roster and then bringing up people and seeing what they got. So not really impressed, not really thrilled so far with what the moves have been in the offseason. Give it like a B- overall in terms of what the Tigers have done. And that's just based on perception. When you come out and you frame it like money's not an object, then the idea is to then maybe pick up one of the best free agents out there to fill needs. That corner left field spot is going to be interesting to see who fills that, how the starting pitchers are going to shake out. Is Anibal Sanchez back? Is Justin Verlander back? A lot of unanswered questions and it leaves me with a lot of nerves regarding the boys of summer. But we'll see. Like I said, don't take this set in stone. This is just my opinion. I believe that it's just a little bit underwhelming, and I'm hoping that I'm proven wrong. No doubt about it. Quickly, before we get to the number 2 story, I love reading the text from my boy Kenny. I send him a text before I start recording the podcast. And I'm like, hey, what do you think about the stories? And he gives me the list, and a lot of the ones you hear are directly from him. I just rank them out. And he gives them to me in no particular order. He doesn't say this needs to be 5, 4, 3. He just shoots out a list of stuff, and I get the privilege of ranking them. But the best one is, sends off a list, and one of the separate tweets that he puts is, lines still suck. That's not a story anymore this week, Kenny, so I'll let you listen to that and get a chuckle, but I got a chuckle out of that text. Lines still suck is maybe another honorable mention from Kenny. The number 2 story this week, got to talk about it. Recruits are what allow your college football team to get better, and one program in the state of Michigan racked up a bunch of nice recruits this week. The University of Michigan is the number 2 ranked story this week in the world of Detroit sports. If you follow recruiting and you're a big Michigan supporter, you have to be thrilled this week. The addition of top running back Kareem Walker has vaulted the University of Michigan to the number 1 ranking in terms of recruiting in their class for 2016. Now, depending on your excitement level and your dedication to the University of Michigan, one, the addition of Kareem Walker is very exciting. He was hotly pursued. He was looked at potentially. He was weighing the options of going either to Florida State or the University of Michigan. And he's 6'1", 208-pounder from DePaul Catholic High School in New Jersey. And he chose you guys. He chose the Wolverines over Florida State. And then you also filled a need that everyone has been talking about in terms of how can the Wolverines improve from this last season in 2015. They've added Devin Bush, and he also was a legacy that was supposed to go to Florida State, but he also chose, Michigan to play out his college football career. And so with the additions this last week for the University of Michigan, everyone who's a supporter is very excited because, that's the lifeblood, that's potential. But now, not to taper expectations, but I'm impressed. Michigan has now brought in 24 commitments, a major boost from what, Jim Harbaugh was able to do last year. But because he was brought in at a time when recruiting had just about basically ended and everybody had, been signed, or the big time players were where they needed to go. But the biggest mark of Jim Harbaugh is yet to be seen because, again, Brady Hoke brought in good talent. He wasn't accused of not bringing in guys that were touted. I mean, you had great running backs brought in. You had wide receivers brought in that had big-name talent, but Brady Hoke wasn't able to coach them up. And so what Michigan State has been effective is they haven't been ranked top 1, top 5 even, in terms of classes for the most part. And so what they've done is they've taken guys maybe who haven't been as highly touted, and they've coached them up to play to the level of, or even better than, 5-star recruits. So that's why when Adam and I talk about recruits a little bit, Adam's a little bit tempered, I'm a little bit tempered, because really in the end, it's not about who you bring in. It's important that you bring in talent, but it's going to be, is this person going to fulfill his legacy? Is he going to be a player that's going to work hard, do what he's got to do to maximize his potential? And the players at Michigan State have done that. I mean, you look at running backs, you lose a Jeremy Langford, you replace him now with a Madre London. You lose great wide receivers, you lose great cornerbacks, and now we just replace them year after year. And we've been consistently winning 11 games, or consistently winning over 10 games the last few seasons. So don't sleep on Michigan State continuing their run of success. But if you're a Michigan fan, and there's plenty of you that listen to this that are, because I get the messages at Detroit Podcast, then you have reason to be excited because you brought in guys that were recruited. You brought in guys that were ranked highly and guys that were sought after by national big-time programs. And so this is exciting times, because now the expectations for the University of Michigan will be ratcheted up. Coach Harbaugh did some great things, but what's going to be the impact of the loss of their defensive coordinator to Maryland? Is that going to have a meaningful impact? Those are questions that are going to be answered. And what is Jim Harbaugh going to do at the quarterback position? By all accounts, you have the guy in place, but they still may have an open competition at the quarterback position. And it'll be interesting to see how Jim Harbaugh works with the quarterback now in the offseason and next year going in, because you have a schedule that's workable, but you're going to play the big dogs, Michigan State, Ohio State, on the road. So it's going to be a little bit tougher with a young quarterback to just go into the big-time places and pull off victories. But you're going to have solid talent at a lot of different positions, and you've upgraded, the positions at linebacker, running back, and with those 24 recruits, they're highly touted. They're good guys. They're going to be a decent, solid team, but I just think that it may take one additional season. Not this year in 2016, but one more big class and then another year of coaching. So in the third year for Jim Harbaugh, I fully expect that they're going to have national title aspirations to get to the playoff, to do some damage, and to also compete regularly versus Michigan State and Ohio State. They have to get those victories. I mean, the question that's been bantered around is what was the season like for Michigan? Was it a success? Was it a season you could call successful because they won several more games than last year, but you didn't beat Ohio State and Michigan State? The diehards say no. We don't want to have 9 wins every year and not beat our rivals and not, get big-time bowls. We don't want to keep going to the same Florida Bowl over and over and over again. The diehards, I agree with. You guys broomed out Lloyd Carr, a respected head coach, because you guys broomed out and we're talking bad and we're fed up with Lloyd Carr for going 10-2 every year, not winning the national title. And I believe that's where the program at Michigan needs to be. And I think Michigan State's getting to that point too, where if Mark D'Antonio doesn't win the national title, it's time to say, hey now, what do we need to get to that next step? Not this year, not next year. He's still striving forward. But if Michigan State gets embarrassed in the playoff or in the national title game, it's not going to look good either, because you have to take steps. You can't get complacent. And so I don't believe either Michigan or Michigan State will. And it's just great because now Michigan's retooling. You're going to have a chance to really put forth the best team out there to compete in this great rivalry. And I'm looking forward to it. But it's great to be on top as a Michigan State supporter. But again, again, to wrap up, don't get too wrapped up in terms of recruiting and the rankings, because if you just really look at it, if you look at the facts, there's been several teams that have had highly ranked classes that haven't done squat. So prove it on the field. Can't wait for this college football playoff, and I can't wait for the next football season to really see what the next chapter brings for Michigan and Michigan State. The number 2 ranked story, the University of Michigan, top ranked recruiting class. All right, you've waited, and I thank you for listening to this podcast. I want to thank the DetroitSportsNation.com website for hosting each and every one of our podcasts. They've been a great support to us. They've helped us to be where we're at today and helped us to climb the charts in terms of overall rankings and to be recognized by outside entities. So thank you to the writers at DetroitSportsNation.com. Also want to thank the U of M Diehards crew. That's a great blog website if you're a Michigan fan. That's a good kid there that he loves Michigan, and he's got a great supportive Twitter page for us. U of M Diehards. Good kid. Always give him a shout out. All right, number 1 story this week. The Detroit Pistons, my goodness, winners of 4 or 5 this last stretch of games, and they played a really solid brand of basketball. Reggie Jackson's proven the doc wrong. I had my doubts whether he was worth it, and when he's on, he's a guy that can lead this Pistons team. And they played a phenomenal game. Really one of the top 3 basketball games I've really ever witnessed in person, start to finish. I sat through the entire game watching the Detroit Pistons go to 4 overtimes to get the victory versus Chicago. And my, oh my, what a great experience on Friday night. And really, in the end, Chicago was utterly exhausted. If you ever want to see an average basketball team play, go watch the replay of the Chicago Bulls versus the Knicks, the second night of their back-to-back after playing the Pistons. I mean, Carmelo Anthony basically took 1 or 2 dribble steps and was getting to the lane so fast, it was hilarious. It was funny, dude. It was like me guarding Carmelo. Jimmy Butler looked like he couldn't move. They looked like they were stuck in sand on defense, and you truly got to see what a tired-ass basketball team looks like, and they got whooped by the Knicks. The score was a little bit closer than how the game actually played because the Bulls just were not into it. And that was greatly due to what the Pistons did. It was a great all-around game as each overtime hit. It was fascinating to watch. And Reggie Jackson, KCP, they did their thing. And it was really kind of a signature win because it really shows that if this Detroit Pistons team, if they put their nose to the grindstone and they play a solid 48 minutes of the brand of basketball that Stan Van Gundy wants, then this team can really do some damage and they can play well with the likes of Andre Drummond, who put in a massive performance. I mean, just prior to the end of the game, I'm not sure exactly what he finished with, but at one point in the game, I tweeted out that he had 31 and 20. 31 points, 20 rebounds. And yeah, granted, it's a 4 overtime game, and he had a chance to put up some stats, but in the end, you look at it, a guy like Andre Drummond has the ability to really dictate what the opposing offense can do because of his presence in there, and you really can force teams to be one-dimensional if Andre Drummond's in the paint doing his thing, and if the team is defending really well. It was a great game, a lot of emotion, a lot of opportunities. You kept wondering, man, is Reggie going to ever end this? Is he going to hit the big shot? And in the end, KCP, Reggie, they were doing their thing and helped this team. And it was a great game to watch, one that's a statement win for for Stan Van Gundy and for the Detroit Pistons. Made national news. 4 overtime games are not very common in the NBA, and it was nice to see the Pistons coming out on the victorious side because they could have lost the game. They could have, withered and not held it together, and everyone played big minutes. In a 4 overtime game, your big stars are going to play big minutes. And so with that, you have to give the Detroit Pistons credit. They made the number 1 story this week in the world of Detroit sports on the Countdown podcast. They played a great brand of basketball, winners of 4 of 5, and we just hope for continued success because this Detroit fan base is looking for a team to grab onto, and the Pistons are a likable team, and you can just sense that they supported Brandon Jennings, Reggie Jackson, Andre Drummond, went to Grand Rapids to support their guy. And so with that, this is a tight-knit group. This is a family. And when you got one guy in charge, Stan Van Gundy, it just makes everything so much easier. You don't have to worry about going over his head. He's the guy that's going to put the best pieces in place for this organization. And before I get out of here and get back to my Sunday activities, a lot of talk about Andre Drummond and his free throws. Not exactly sure. I was for the Hacka Shaq, Hacka DeAndre Jordan, but now that you see it for a guy that's on your team, it sucks. You got a flow of a game, and all of a sudden, it's bogged down by the whistle, by the foul, and then in the end, how you make a team pay for doing this nonsense strategy is to make the free throws. And, Andre Drummond was able to make a half-court shot, yet he can't make a free throw. I don't blame him. Free throws aren't easy. I've actually, in gym workouts, the gym I'm part of has a basketball hoop. You actually go there and just start shooting free throws, and as a short guy, you're like, damn, this isn't easy at all. And I know you practice it, but it just sucks that free throws are a situation that are hindering Andre Drummond, and it bogs the game down. And really, I was at a game when they started implementing the Hacka Andre Drummond strategy, and it killed the vibe at the Palace. It sucked. I mean, basically, it kills the flow of the game. It's not any fun, and I think the NBA should really take a long, hard look at this Hacka strategy, because it's not good for the game. And in the end, this is a product that you pay for to be entertained, and if that's going to bog down the game and not make it an enjoyable experience, the league should look at it. And I know I only got on board when I seen it in person, but it isn't a good strategy. It's kind of a defensive strategy. It takes the life out of the game, and they should do away with it. Thank you again for downloading this podcast. I greatly appreciate all the support on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. Message us. We've built a Twitter community that we're proud of and that we use to just banter our thoughts. Our Twitter page is basically our thoughts right from our brain out into the Twitter universe. No filter, uncensored, and we're greatly proud of the project that we've done here at the Detroit Sports Podcast Network, and we greatly appreciate your support. For the Doc, John Macaroon, this has been the Detroit Sports Countdown Podcast, the 11th edition. See everybody next week.